All right, thank you. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Appreciate that. So this is going to be a real fast flash of 10-minute speakers. Hey, Chris. And then we're going to go outside where we've been spending all week putting these systems together. We're going to have rainwater catchment and harvesting, talk about animal systems, hands-on hugel. Yeah, all right, cool. So I'm going to lead off by talking about water. How many of you have a house? How many of you have gutters on your house? All right. How many of you have a pond? All right. How many of you are hooked up to municipal water? How many of you divert surface water? All right. How many of you are on a well? All right. We got a lot of groundwater folks. All right. Let's start there. Groundwater. Groundwater is special. It's really old. It takes a long time to recharge these systems, unless you're fortunate enough to live in Covelo or Round Valley, where those systems recharge really quickly. So we can catch all the water we want and put it into tanks and put it into ponds. And that's the easy part. The harder part is, how do we get this water in the ground? So if you go into mature, sustainable forest systems, you'll see that there's no runoff except the runoff that's occurring in the streams. It's because all of that water is being infiltrated. It's getting into the ground. And that's how that system recharges itself every year. And then the hydrology lets it out. And that's why the top is dry first, and then as the hydrology moves down and down and down. So this really is important where we're looking at groundwater through wells. So there's a lot of systems, and I'll show you some examples out there, but there's a lot of ways we need to start looking at how can we facilitate the recharge of groundwater. How do we get more water back into the system? So that's kind of like the end of it, but the beginning of it is, how much water do you need? So what's the average water use of a 4-person family in California? 250 gallons a day. That's the average. I'm sure a lot of you in here use a lot less than that, right? We need to take a look at that as a domestic use, but we also have to take a look at that in our agricultural systems. So how much water do you need per square foot? How much water do you need per plant, per fruit tree? And there's a lot of things we can be doing to reduce that need. It's very easy to be like, okay, I'm going to take a 3-minute shower instead of a 13-minute shower, right? I'm going to put on low-flow shower heads. That's so easy. We've been doing that for decades now. But we need to think about this more in our agricultural systems as well. Reducing how much we need. Because if we're on groundwater, like a well, we can't really see how much is in that tank until the well no longer pumps water. But if we're running off of ponds and tanks, we can see as that storage shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. The solution is not to dig a deeper well. The solution is not to put in more tanks and bigger ponds. The solution is to take a look at how we can minimize how much water we actually need. So you got to start with a water budget. How much do I need? How can I reduce it? Now, what is the most sustainable source of water? Where can that come from? If we're implementing groundwater recharge systems, it might be groundwater. If we're infiltrating more water and we're increasing in-stream flows and we have storage, it could be surface water. So it really depends on where you are and where you're at with that. So Rainwater Catchment Act of 2013, before the question is, I heard rainwater catchment is illegal. It is not illegal in the state of California. The Rainwater Catchment Act of 2013 turned rainwater landing on your roof and landing directly into storage back into private property. It is no longer public property. So you can now catch and store that water, which is pretty exciting. But when we connect this to cannabis, the surfaces of that water plays a bigger and bigger role as our testing gets more and more and more stringent. So you got to think about the surfaces that that water is touching. What kind of roofing materials do you have? What is it picking up? Right now we're getting into heavy metals testing. Shingles made 20, 30, 40 years ago might have some nasty heavy metals in them. So we have to think about that. But the point I really want to get across is before you go out and start getting into these systems of like rainwater catchment, you got to think about how much water you need, and you got to reduce that budget down. And you'd be amazed at how much water you can store in the ground by just increasing your carbon content. You could do hugelkultur, or you could do something as simple as cover cropping. How many of you have cover crops growing right now? Right on. So whether you're doing veggies or cannabis, can you hear me now? All right. We have to also make sure that our soil is always protected. And I think the best way to do that is through living mulches, always having something living, even in the wintertime. There's plenty of cover crops that we could be planting. As soon as harvest comes out, those crops go down. They thrive through the winter. You can chop and drop, you can mulch, you can till, you can do whatever your strategies are. But we really have to start by increasing our carbon storage, which relates to the increased capacity of holding water in the soil, which relates to you need less storage or you need less groundwater, and everybody's happy with that. Sound good? All right. 600 gallons per 1,000 square feet per inch of rain. 600 gallons per 1,000 square feet per inch of rain. So 1,000 square foot house, we're up in Humboldt County, on an average annual year, 26,000 gallons of water. So now if you want to get back to the average household of 4 at 255, you can divide that and you can see how much water is landing on the average size home in California. There is plenty of water. It comes back to how we use it. Got time for 1-2 questions. Anybody? Nobody? Yeah. Storage tanks smell anaerobic at the end of the year when you get down to the bottom. This brings up the systems that you engineer to capture this water and store it. You need to make sure that you have filtration systems. And I mean from the roof to the tank. You got to establish some level of filtration, and we'll show you that outside. The other piece of this is there's a beautiful biolayer that gets set up on the bottom of your tank. That's why bulkheads are offset a few inches. You don't want to disturb that biolayer. That's the layer between anaerobic and aerobic. So the less you disturb it, the better. Ponds, the same thing, right? There's that nice biolayer at the bottom. And your ponds should have plants in them. Please, even if you have a liner, there's many different ways to get plants in there to keep that water quality up. All right. Can the biolayer ever get too big? Yes, it can. And that comes back to the volume of the container, the pond. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. I want to make sure that once everybody's done, you come outside of the Rage Lounge and you see all these cool things we put together for you. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dan.